So it's been announced for some time that one of the biggest things that we'll see in 2016 for Counter-Strike Global Offensive is this concept of a televised league which will be put on by Turner. And apparently, according to some news that kind of came out today, it'll apparently potentially be some type of partnership with Twitch for some type of hybrid online on television league. And according to reports, it should start with its first season sometime in June, which is of course quite far away. But when thinking about this league coming out, one of the big things that came across my mind, I'm sure a lot of other people's minds, is the fact that this league has the potential to reach out to a brand new audience that has either never seen Counter-Strike Global Offensive before, or maybe hasn't really even seen esports before. And now that this will be on TV, people might be curious and check it out, and it could be a way to grab hold of a whole new community of people to add to our scene. And when thinking about that, I thought it'd be cool to come up with some production ideas on what could happen pre-game, during the game, and post-game for this televised league in order to make it more accessible to newcomers. And I would say, though, that these ideas aren't necessarily limited just to newcomers, and it certainly isn't just limited to the Turner League. This could be used for future CSGO tournaments that we see on like almost a monthly basis these days with majors and the big tournaments that all these different leagues and organizations are putting on. I think some of these ideas could be implemented just across the board, or they could even be features that get added to GoTV on a so it's put in on a permanent basis actually inside the game of CSGO. Now, I will also say that not all these ideas are original. Some of these ideas are ones I've just seen discussed before on Reddit or at events when we're hanging out, in between games or, at after parties or what have you. I will try my best to credit my sources or, cite the people who really came up with these ideas as best as I can, though sometimes it's been so many people talking about it that it's hard to really pinpoint one person who came up with it. I will also say that some of these ideas are more or less tweaks to things that we already have that exist, but just some changes I would like to see to them. And then some of these are just ideas that I came up with, I think, originally. Maybe someone else had said something about it somewhere, and I didn't know. But it's something that I thought of, and I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to steal anyone's ideas purposefully. If in fact you have heard these ideas somewhere else, that's cool. And again, it's not like me trying to come up with all these crazy things to make me look great. I would like this to generate some discussion to come up with some more ideas, or maybe you see one of my ideas and that inspires you to come up with something, or maybe you would like to change some of the things that I've said in this video to something else. So that's really my goal here, is to come up with some really cool features we could add to the production of CSGO going forward. Now, when thinking about the Turner League, from what I understand, this will be a very player-focused league, a lot of interviews and biographies. Apparently, they have already started shooting footage at some of the different LAN tournaments that we've had towards the end of this year, which is certainly cool to see. It's cool to see it's more player focused. It makes it more personable to an audience, especially for newcomers. It allows them to relate to these people and learn about them, and it becomes an interest piece at that point. So I think this is really cool. And obviously, some of the things that we want to see for a Turner League and future leagues are things that we already have. We just want to see those things continue. So obviously, everyone wants to see these interviews pre and post game. Obviously, we love our analyst desk bits between games. We obviously like to see the action, so we want good observing that's going to, make sure that we get to see all the main interactions that take place throughout a round. Of course, we love instant replay. These are all features that I think are already very commonplace in the scene, and so they're not even really worth mentioning as much as it's just important that we see the Turner League, the televised league, be in line with what we're used to as hardcore fans. These are the certain things that we expect, but at the same time adding some features that make it more accessible to newcomers. So that's kind of the basis of this going forward. So some cool things that I would like to see that would be maybe pre-game, like before a map happens. In line with obviously some type of pre-game show within an analyst desk or something like that, talking about the teams and players and all that stuff. So some things I think that would be cool to add to that whole portion of the show would be this idea of these map overviews to kind of teach newcomers about the map before they watch it played. Now, PGL already does this to some extent, I feel. I've seen this at the Major in Cluj, as well as just some of the online stuff that PGL does, as apparently my dog will join me for the rest of the video, maybe, is they will play this kind of overview of the map, and they'll even put like on the bottom like the name of the location that they're panning the camera over. And that's all well and cool, but I think we can enhance that a little bit, at least for the televised league for newcomers. I don't think it's really necessary for commonplace tournaments that we see all the time for the people who are constantly watching on Twitch and stuff, but it'd be cool if we had a short little video segment, whether it be live on TV before the match starts, or whether it be some type of accessible online media that you can direct people to from the TV set, like a banner scrolling on the bottom, like, hey, if you want to learn more about this map or this thing, check out this site, you know, or whatever. We see this all the time on TV where you're trying to get people to migrate over to your online content as well. So this could either be online content or it could be a segment during the actual live production. And essentially it would just be a narrated map overview. So maybe, you know, if you're doing a map overview of Cobble, for instance, you could do a shot of this is middle on Cobble, and then you can kind of talk about some of the different spot names on both sides of middle, maybe some spots where you think you might see some duels, like on the danger stairwell or the double doors, or some different corners that CTs can hold over at, you know, long A, and incorporate that in the A bomb site. Then maybe do a section talking about B and, you know, the drop down room and long B and some common spots you might see CTs play on the B bomb site. And the whole point of this is to allow newcomers to kind of already get an idea of what they might be seeing. Some common things that may come up, something that they can relate to later on, like, oh, I saw that, I know what this is, I know what's going on. And it just makes it easier for people to catch on. Just to have a map overview that's a little bit more detailed. Don't have to go crazy overboard describing every single tactic that the person might see. It would be just a really short clip, maybe a couple of minutes long, that just, you know, briefly glosses over the map and some really common and basic concepts that take place. And I think that that would just, you know, really help someone who hasn't seen CS before, maybe isn't an avid esports follower, to be able to check it out and understand it. You know, maybe a kid, you know, in his, you know, early teens or whatever, wants to sit down and watch this game with his parents and show them what this is really all about. And it's much easier to do that whenever it's right there on TV rather than hauling your parents into your room to watch a stream on your computer. And if that's the case, you know, this will just make it easier for those people to get an idea of what's going on so that they can appreciate it a little bit better, I think. Now, alongside these map overview videos that can be, like I said, live segments or online media that we can use to help kind of educate newcomers before they watch the game to make it easier for them to understand, is also something that I've already seen before, which are some of these YouTube videos we've seen Steel do as well as Adren do. I think the closest comparison to what I'm talking about is the what the fuck is videos that Steel does, or is like, you know, what the fuck is a crossfire, or what the fuck is baiting. I think that's the two that I remember off the top of my head. But do some videos like this to describe some key terms that we use in CSGO so they can understand the lingo. You know, that way whenever they're listening to a broadcast and they hear someone say, oh, and this guy is baiting this guy, they're doing a bait setup, or, you know, they have set up a crossfire here. I mean, I guess crossfire is pretty clear, but you get my point. There are some terms that maybe we take for granted as very easy to understand, but maybe a newcomer wouldn't, and they would be a little bit confused, and so it could kind of cause them to maybe tune out a little bit from the action because they don't necessarily understand what the commentator has told them. I think that's one of the biggest things about this televised league, is I think it takes almost maybe a different style of commentary. I would say pretty close to what we already hear, but maybe a little bit tuned down to help newcomers be able to adapt. So I would just add that note as well in general, but I think it'd be cool to see some media created that explain the economy, especially. That's one of the biggest thing that separates Counter-Strike from any other shooter that someone may have seen before or played before, is this economy system. So a brief explanation of the economy system could be a segment before a series starts or as accessible online media, and then these different segments that discuss maybe you know, CSGO terminology, like some of the examples I've mentioned already with crossfires and baiting and things like that. So this is just content before a game ever starts that, you know, could be developed that will, you know, allow people to learn more about the game before they watch it. And also, along with that, you could even add another kind of segment later on that maybe discusses, like, if you know that this team is the best team on this particular map and they run a specific tactic that is very effective, Yeah, I've done this with my Behind the Play series on YouTube. I've seen Adren do this where he kind of analyzes a team's tactics. Days does this, Steel does it. So many people do this. Moses. I mean, I could go on forever. There's a lot of people that have already, done this type of work, but it would be cool. And this would probably be more of online media content or something you might see during a post-game or halftime show or something that just kind of illustrates a tactic that a team used, break it down from a third-person perspective, like a bird's eye view of it and how it all worked out. And that could be something else that could help teach people about some of the tactics that are used in CSGO. So these are just, some pre-game or outside of the game online content type things that we could see develop. We've already seen it develop. We could route people to people's YouTubes, I suppose, but it'd be cool to see something with higher production value instead of just someone recording it in-game with their webcam and stuff. Just something that has some real production value and editing to it that could, do the same job but make it more visually appealing and more accessible to, newcomers to watching the game. Now, one other kind of idea that I had, and this is not an original idea, I think I've seen this discussed and hashed out before on Reddit several times, and this would be more of an in-game feature, I suppose, though it would only be for spectators. And that would be this concept of having team jerseys for the players in-game on their CT or T model. Now, again, I don't want this to be live to the players. I don't want to affect the integrity of the game by making people harder to see or easier to spot than they should be or what have you. I don't want to affect the actual gameplay, but I think it'd be cool for spectators to be able to see team jerseys with their names on the back and their number or something like that. Whatever. CGS did this. We've seen ESL, I think, do this at times. A bunch of people have done this to some degree at some point in time. But it would be cool to see it with this, maybe enhanced better. Maybe there's some product placement opportunities here for sponsors for different organizations. I know I've also seen some people talk about the idea of like NCT Spawn or Terra Spawn having the team logo and maybe their sponsors and stuff there. You see this in StarCraft 2, or at least that's one of the first places I personally saw it, but I know it happens in other games as well, like Dota and stuff. We kind of have the team crest, branded right there in the spawn. Do like a third-person overview of CT Spawn before the round starts, and you get to kind of see their team name and their supporters and all that stuff. So that's something that could be implemented in-game as for spectators only to not affect the game, but still be able to add some cool visuals to the game, I suppose. Now, alongside this is pre-game once again, alongside this idea of doing a map overview where you kind of talk about the map and discuss some common spots and maybe some common plays or common smokes that you might see thrown or what have you, along with that idea, Thorin obviously came out with a video very recently talking about a true map pick ban analysis phase. And I think that this needs to be implemented just in general across all CSGO terms. So I think this would be a good place to do it as well. Because I think when you combine this idea of really analyzing, what team's good on what map, in a head-to-head matchup, who has the edge on what map based on, previous results and their play style and the personnel that they have and how that personnel can really work these particular spots on the map and the different stats that come into it as far as, map win rate or head-to-head win rate on particular maps, as well as just the trends we have seen in the metagame for CSGO on what sidedness is the map. You combine all that with this map overview segment where you're actually kind of talking about the map a bit, and it kind of gives you some talking points to say, oh, this might have been why this team banned this map or picked this map. I think you combine all that together, and that would be like a really cool part of a pregame show to really discuss the maps in detail, which is one of the biggest things about CSGO is where we're actually going to play at, the arena these teams will actually battle on. And so that's just something else I would add. Now, on top of the map overviews, on top of the map ban analysis phase, another cool thing I'd like to see in a pregame show, and I haven't seen this at all, and I know it's probably because it's a bit difficult to do because the game is so dynamic. People change their spots all the time, and obviously terrorist rounds aren't always straightforward. Sometimes they're just default, and they shift into something else. Or one round they'll be really heavy on one side of the map for a execute tactic, and then somewhere else so it can be hard. But this idea of having some type of graphic that gets thrown up on the screen, and again, this could be used for any CSGO tournament going forward, would be like a map overlay graphic, but you could put the player, like a picture of his face and his name or something, in the location that he would normally play, maybe on a CT side spot, or that he would normally play on a T side default round. So, for example, On Cash, if I'm talking about Cash and I'm talking about Cloud9, we know that Sean Garrett is going to be lurking on the B side of the map on T side, so you could put him over there. Like, this is where you're going to see him play a lot. Shroud, usually going to be playing inside the squeaky door on default. Freakazoid usually engaging over here at the A main with Skadoodle kind of shifting around with the op between A main and mid, and nothing also kind of being a part of that pack of players. That would be like a T default. And you could talk about the CT spots. Of course, this changes all the time. The Cloud9 is a perfect example of this, where they change it up, where sometimes Skadoodle's anchoring B with the op, sometimes he's anchoring A with the op. Some Freakazoid's usually playing in the A bomb side. That usually doesn't change. Usually, if Shroud's not at A, usually he's being like a mid-vents rotator or something like that. Sean Gear's usually anchoring the B-bomb site. So and that's not the best example, but you could even show multiple overlays at that point. Then, like, oh, this is kind of the common CT setup that Cloud9 uses. This is their 1-3-1 setup for Cash. This is more of their default 2-1-2. And this just adds to kind of like what I was talking about with the map overviews and stuff. It sets people up for what they're about to see. So they can already kind of begin to understand, oh, okay, this is where this player is usually going to play, so I'm going to see him playing here a lot. So you can have multiple graphics for default 1-3-1, what their A execute setup looks like, what their B execute setup looks like, and it just gives you an idea of, as a viewer, where you're going to see certain people at, so you can already kind of be a little bit prepared for it. And again, I know this is difficult because people change things up all the time. People's CT sides can be very dynamic and they can shift players a lot. But it at least gives you like a baseline of what is most common and what you might see most often. And this can allow for even better analysis pregame, because not only do you now get to talk about map picks and bans, not only do you get to talk about just the common things we already see in an analysis phase pregame, but now you can talk about, okay, this player plays this particular spot, so he has an integral role to be able to make this work. So if I'm talking about Kaba, like I did in the map overview, we know Shroud plays in the long B platform for Cloud9, so he plays a really key role. That's a huge position to play on this map to help open things up, as this is usually a terrorist-sided map. The B bomb site's probably one of the more commonly hit sites on the map for terrorists, and so this long B platform player Shroud is going to be really key on trying to open up this bomb site. And let's say they're playing against Luminosity, and we know that Cold Zera and Bolts and Fallen are usually going to be, well, I guess Fallen is all over the place with this op, so that was probably a bad example for anchoring A. So you could still say Bolts and Cold and Steel usually playing drop down room, but so it's usually then Cold and Bolts that's focused on long B platform, if not Fallen with the op. So you can talk about, now you can bring up player matchups, like, okay, a key matchup we're going to see here is Shroud versus Cold. Or if you wanted to, and then, Freakazoid versus Steel because of the drop down room. So now you can talk about usual positions. You can talk about player matchups. Maybe these are some of the duels. We're probably going to see these two guys duel because of the positions that they play. It just adds a whole new layer of analysis that I've yet to see in CS:GO, period. And while the map pick ban phase has been brought up by Thorin, I've never seen anyone bring up this idea of talking about common positions that players play and really going into detail about some of the player matchups that you might see. I know I've seen some player matchup graphics before where they like bring two people up and they compare their stats in the game, but usually it's because you're picking like the star player of one team versus star player of another, or opper versus opper, but it's not really tuned to the actual matchups that you're usually going to see in particular duels. And so this is kind of a tweak on this idea of player matchups, and I think that'd be really cool. And again, it's just about having that graphic in the beginning to kind of illustrate what people will see. Now, I will also say that I know a lot of people are saying, screw third-person cameras, TGS overdid it. That's all very well and good, but I think that third-person camera use can be highly effective to set up the bigger picture, to set up the scene for what the people are going to be watching. Before an execute takes place, do a third-person camera view of everyone setting up their nades and things like that. Now, this isn't brand new. I've seen some productions do this already that have good observers that are paying attention and know what to look out for. But I've also seen a lot of events strictly be in first person and never show any third-person angles. And I think for Turner, you have to have some. And I think the perfect example would be, when a team's setting up for an execute. To pan over that, to when a team setting up for a retake, pan over that a little bit. So like maybe a team setting up to do a retake on the B-bomb site on Dust 2. Pan outside the B-bomb site. See them setting up at doors and window before you get in on a first-person angle on whoever you want to choose, the people holding or the people attacking. Or people, we use Cobble a lot in this video. They're setting up for a long B execute. Do a pan over long B to see everyone setting up their nades, and we can see where the nades are landing. And it just helps build the bigger picture and helps it be easier to swallow on what's actually going on in the round. And so I think that you have to add some third-person camera use to this, and I think that some events do this well already, so this is not a new idea at all, but I see a lot of events not do it at all, and I think that that's a huge disservice to the production of CSGO to not have any third-person camera work to help set up the scene, so to speak. I think you do have to be a bit careful, though, on using it too much, obviously. And also, you have to be a bit careful on this whole concept of doing split screens for, like, 1v1 clutches and doing picture-in-picture to help show us a kill that maybe we missed because we were observing one side of the map and a kill took place somewhere else. You got to be careful on using that too much. I know a lot of people have credited PGL for all this cool in-game production that they've done, and they have done a great job. There's no doubt about it. You know, after every event happens, it seems like these event organizers and leagues are pushing the limits of CSGO production and just, you know, evolving it and coming up with way cooler features and stuff, and that's great. But I think, me personally, there's been times where I've seen too much picture-in-picture, too much split screen, and it becomes like you get to see two shitty video players of what's going on rather than just one good one. Sure, in a 1v1 clutch, you'd like to make sure you catch the kill, so it's cool to have the split screen, but in all honesty, I'd rather just hone in on one person's point of view, be able to see one nice clear picture rather than see two crappy ones, and then you have the corners with all this open space that looks awkward, and I don't know, I think we have to find a better way to do that, basically. So I guess just use that stuff carefully. Now, when it comes to some post-game analysis stuff, we've already talked about some pre-game stuff I'd like to see. I think in-game, there's really not much I would change from what we already see in tournaments. Obviously, we want good observing, we want good commentary. I talked about adding a little bit more third-person camera use than we normally use, as well as this idea of seeing in-game jerseys and logos and stuff. But there's not much I would change about in-game production. I think you can keep it simple, and it will be fine. But some stuff I'd like to see added post-game and maybe post-game analysis besides what we already see with, you know, the commentators talking about what happened in the game and some key rounds or some key kills that took place or, you know, doing a post-game interview with players. These are all common things we want to see post-game anyway. But some cool stuff that I think we could see in a post-game scenario that we don't see is a better heat map. Now, I know we already see a heat map that PGL has used where they kind of just brush over an area with color on where stuff takes place, but if I'm honest, that looks very abstract and it's actually hard to read. And even when I saw some of the analysis desk segments at Cluj where the heat map got brought up, it's almost like the commentators struggled to find a way to even incorporate it into their analysis because it looks kind of vague, to be honest. And I think if I was someone who had never watched CS or esports before and I saw the heat map that PGL used, I would be a bit confused. I'd be like, okay, you know, what is this really telling me? And this is not a shot at PGL because they do a great job. Once again, they're one of the only people who even try to use a heat map, which I think a heat map could be useful, but I just think I would tweak it a bit. And I think I would do it kind of the way I see a heat map in the NBA on three-point shooting, where they actually show you dots where all the shots were missed and made in a basketball game. I think that would be cool to add to a heat map in CSGO. Maybe have dots for where people died at, so you can really see like where, like, so if it's a CT scene, where did they die at? So where are some spots where they struggled to hold? You know, if you see a bunch of dots on the B-bomb site on Cobble of people dying, and maybe you could even find a way like this is all the deaths that took place within the first 30 seconds of the round. And you could see, okay, well, you can see all these deaths in the B-bomb site here in the first 30 seconds, which means they're suffering opening picks a lot here on the B-bomb site, that they're getting mowed over by quick executes within in the beginning of the round by a team that's like really fast-paced on their B executes, and this is where we really saw them struggle on their CT side, and that's where they lost a lot of their rounds. Or it could be a heat map on where are people getting their kills from. So inverse of that, we can see that this guy playing behind the statue or chicken coop with the op, he's been getting a lot of kills on people coming off long B, so long B's been defending quite well here on Cobble, and that could be a whole analysis point right there. So I think we could just use a more detailed heat map that's a bit easier to read and therefore could be used better in analysis, bringing it in and incorporating it into discussion. And another thing I'd like to see, and this is, I guess, the last idea I have for this video, is this idea of some cool things you can do with instant replay. Obviously, instant replay is a cool feature. It's a no-brainer that we would use it in-game. You know, do a instant replay of a first-person perspective of the guy who got all these cool kills to hold a site or execute a site or what have you. Obviously, it will be cool to see then after we see the first-person instant replay, do a third-person instant replay. You know, see where the guys were coming in from and how this dude was still getting all the kills, you know. And with that, I know we already have like X-ray, so we get like an outline around a player to kind of get an idea, oh, he's a terrorist, so this is a CT. We can get an outline. We see him through the wall. That's all well and good. Maybe we don't have to completely blue or red someone out from a third-person perspective to really kind of like make sure we solidify that we know where they are. I don't know. That's just like maybe make sure it's even more visible than just the outline around the player, though the outline may be enough. I'm not sure how that would look on TV. But one other thing is that I know we always see now with X-ray where people are staring at. There's all these lines, you know, going around. That's cool. But I think sometimes that can get a little bit confusing. You just see lines crossing paths everywhere. And so while that can be useful, I think what would be cooler, and this could maybe even be a GoTV feature in the future or just for this, is instead of the line like coming off the player's barrel in third-person X-ray mode or whatever, always being there, being a permanent fixture, I think it would be cool to you make it only visible when they're firing a shot, or maybe you just do one solid line just once whenever they get the kill. And so I guess it'd be like kind of weird because you see like it's like people shooting lasers at each other or something like that. But it would just like make it to where you see people coming out and then boom, you see where they got the kill because they're coming out. All you're seeing is the person with the outline around them. You're not seeing the gun barrel line flying around everywhere at all times. But as soon as someone runs out and gets a kill, then boom, you see like a little laser come across his barrel to the guy or whatever. And so it just makes that line only visible when a kill takes place rather than permanently all the time when they're just looking around. And I think if you added that feature from an instant replay perspective, this could allow you to like better illustrate what happened in instant replay during a round. If later on in the post-game analysis, the analysts want to break down a round a bit better, then they can show a third-person angle. They can show where everyone was. They can show them running out. Then you'll see where the kill took place. Like, okay, so this guy ran out long B. Boom, you see he gets the kill on the guy here by statue, and then he, you know, runs out and is able to plant the bomb. And that was a really key entry. That's what really helped the team solidify the round. So this is just enhancing what we already have. I think analysts already break down rounds pretty well in rounds that they pick out to break down. Though some events I don't see them picking out rounds to break down. Sometimes they just do like a post-game analysis wrap after the map is over and they just talk about a little bit what happened instead of pulling out key rounds. But some events do the key rounds. I think this would just be a way to when you're pulling out rounds to talk about and you're doing a replay of them, to have this, you know, do the first person angle so we can see the cool kills. Yeah, certainly want to see that. Of course, no one denies that. But then do like an alternative instant replay afterwards that shows the third person pan of the camera with this idea I have of showing the lines only when the kills take place and yada, yada, yada. So that's just kind of another idea that I had. Now, I'd like to hear your ideas, so if you have some, feel free to share them. We can discuss it. Hopefully this will get to the right people. The right people will see it, and we can see some of these things implemented in future events, especially this idea of this Turner League that'll maybe have a lot of newcomers coming through. If I come up with any more ideas, I might do a part 2 video to this. This is just some of the ideas that I had right off the top of my head now. I was thinking about it the day before I recorded this video, and I kind of put together a document throughout the day of ideas that I had, and I decided to put this video together. So I hope you like it. Hope that it'll inspire some of you to have some ideas. Hopefully, like I said, we can make this a discussion and the right people will see it. We can see some of these features implemented. If you don't like some of these things, let me know why. If you do, but you'd like to change something about it, let me know. That'd be really cool. So yeah, just thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy, follow and subscribe for more content. Thanks a lot.